What's up, everybody? I hope my Marvel fans out there enjoyed that Infinity War reference, because that's exactly how I imagined the internal battle that I had when I saw the Galaxy S10 Plus for the first time. You see, I've been that Apple fanboy for 10 years now, having owned every iPhone every single year since the 3GS came out in 2009. And in this video, I'm going to explain to you my personal reasons for why I decided to finally switch over to the dark side and own my first Android device ever. Let's get started. So here's the thing, I've owned an iPhone for 10 years and I've always loved the hardware. The high-end build quality and the polished smoothness of iOS is undeniable. I love how easily it worked within my ecosystem of Macs, iPads, Apple Watches, and even AirPods. This is exactly what Apple is good at and how they get many users to remain in their ecosystem. Everything just works seamlessly together. At one point, Apple was king of the market on the hardware side and on the software side. There was nobody that could compete with Apple on either of those aspects. But as time went on, although their hardware remained top of its class, their innovation on the software side began to fall behind. I can tell you this because I was there. The jailbreak community was thriving years ago, and with every iteration of iOS that Apple released, the race for a jailbreak began. Why was jailbreaking such a big deal? Because it allowed us to customize our iPhones and bring features that many of us wanted. And I admit some of the features were just gimmicks for fun, but some of them were legitimate software tweaks that made using my iPhone a lot more convenient. Things like quick reply, toggles, and night shift were all jailbreak tweaks years before Apple even implemented them into iOS. But I had to jailbreak my new iPhone every year in order to get them. And as the years went by, it became harder for the jailbreak community to crack the latest iOS software. So eventually I just stopped doing it. And I went stock iOS for years. And this is where the growing pains began. At first, it was minor annoyances, like the fact that I couldn't create new groups for my contacts directly on my iPhone without connecting it to my Mac or downloading a third-party app. Or when Apple actually removed useful functionality, like the ability to select multiple photos in the Photos app to instantly share them or delete them. Yeah, that function had been available, and then one day Apple decided to remove that ability completely, for no apparent reason. We had to wait until iOS 9 for them to add it back as a feature, even though it was previously available in other iOS versions. And my favorite software change actually happened recently with a swift change to the quick toggles in Control Center. When Apple released Control Center in iOS 7, it was very apparent that clicking a toggle would turn that function on or off. Toggling Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on and off was something that I did quite frequently on a daily basis, and the Control Center toggles made it fast and easy to do that. But with the release of iOS 11, Apple changed the way that those toggles worked and rendered them essentially useless. Apple decided that the toggles would no longer turn off the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth like they had been doing for the past 4 years, but instead, they would simply stop looking for new connections until the next day, at which point the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth activated again and continued searching. This essentially meant that the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antennas still remained turned on even when you clicked the toggles to be off. Not only did this potentially drain your battery, but it was also a security risk. It also meant that every time I wanted to actually turn off Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, I needed to unlock my phone, go into the settings, and manually turn it off. This made the toggles useless. This change obviously wasn't welcome, but instead of giving its customers what they wanted and reverting back to its original functionality, Apple's solution was to display a one-time pop-up explaining how useless the toggle had actually become. Till this day, Apple still hasn't changed it back. Now, it may seem like I'm ranting here, but these are just a few of the many growing pains that I went through. Meanwhile, I kept hearing about how Android was super customizable. Every new software feature that was released on iPhone seemed to have already been on Android for months, even years. Sure, it had a lot of gimmicks as well that I used to tease Android users about, but it also had features that I wanted. So this brings me to the first reason that I switched, and that reason is software. Just a few days prior to making the switch, I somehow found myself on YouTube looking at random videos. You know, one of those nights where you're just laying in bed and you enter that weird part of YouTube.
Things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Well, that weird part of YouTube for me was watching videos about Android. Keep in mind, at this point I had absolutely no intention of switching from my new iPhone XS Max to an Android device. That thought hadn't even formulated in my mind. Yes, I was growing increasingly frustrated with iOS, but I still wasn't compelled to switch for any reason at all. But on this night, I found myself watching a video about the Pixel 2 and all the things that it could do. I saw some pretty cool things that I liked, and before I knew it, I was digging deep into what Android actually offered today in 2019. Google Assistant seemed to be smarter than Siri in most cases. The UI didn't seem quite so Android anymore. It was very clean and aesthetically pleasing, and I suddenly had a greater desire for widgets and a customizable home screen. And there was this thing called an always-on display that was always on? How is this possible? I was absolutely intrigued by this point, but I still wasn't enthusiastic about making the switch yet. There was something major holding me back. You see, the Pixel 2 is a really great phone, but it's not quite an iPhone. You know, when you look at it, the build quality doesn't immediately jump out at you as a high-end premium device. The design is nice, but it just doesn't give me that feeling that the iPhone did. So I began searching for other devices. Was it possible that there was a phone out there that had the superior build quality that iPhone has, while also running Android in all of its glory? And then I found it. The Galaxy S10 Plus. And that brings me to the second reason I made the switch: hardware. When I saw the first glimpse of the edge-to-edge infinity display on the Galaxy S10 Plus, my iPhone immediately felt outdated. The front of the phone appeared to be all screen with a camera cutout in replacement of a notch. The bezels seemed almost non-existent, especially on the sides due to the curved display. The lack of a true facial recognition system like Face ID was pleasantly replaced with an in-display fingerprint scanner. It felt futuristic, as it was completely under the display and was invisible to the eye. This was a feature that I thought Apple was going to actually implement before they chose to ultimately go with Face ID. I think both are great, suitable security features, but the in-display fingerprint sensor won to me by a hair simply because it doesn't require a notch on the display and it works from any angle. I wouldn't have to pick up my phone anymore to unlock it. Something else Samsung got right was the S10 Plus had a premium build quality. Its glass sandwich design with aluminum bezels gives it an overall high-end look, and it gave me that feeling that I would get whenever I would see a new iPhone. I truly believe that this is the first time Samsung has not only caught up, but actually surpassed Apple in terms of overall hardware design. By this point, I was completely sold. I was past the point of no return. I had actually fell in love with a phone that was not made by Apple. So the next morning, I searched every possible retailer I could until I found a Target that had the model that I was looking for. They happened to be offering a $200 gift card for any new line or upgrade as well, so that was a bonus win for me. There was a few additional things that I noticed hardware-wise once I did get the device. These things didn't really convince me any more than I already was, but they were additional icing on the cake, if you will. The first thing I noticed when I picked up the phone was just how light it was. It felt premium in my hand thanks to the materials, but it was noticeably lighter than my iPhone XS Max. Now, some people may like that it's lighter. Some people may like the heavier feel of the iPhone XS Max. Personally, I can't decide. The XS Max has a more premium feel because it's heavier, but at the same time I enjoy how light the S10 Plus feels when I'm using it with one hand. When I turned on the phone, I also noticed that the S10 Plus did have a slightly better OLED display, and that's thanks to the higher resolution. I set the same photo as my wallpaper for both phones, and I began pixel peeping, and I could definitely see more details on the S10 Plus. Now, to be completely fair, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the XS Max's display. The iPhone XS Max has one of the best, if not the second best display on the market right now. But it did feel nice to know that I got a slight upgrade in display quality, even if it wasn't something that I asked for. And the last icing on the cake was when I opened up the camera. During my YouTube research, I was a little skeptical about whether the third camera on the back would actually be useful, or if it would just be an extra spec on paper and more of a gimmick. But after having used the wide-angle lens, it definitely surpassed my expectations. I'm even considering replacing my GoPro with it in most scenarios. So I was pleased that it was a piece of hardware that I was actually going to use. And that's the story of how a seemingly frustrated Apple-loving fanboy like myself finally had enough and decided to give Galaxy and Android a shot. Android 9 is what intrigued me, but Galaxy S10 Plus's hardware is what sealed the deal. Without Samsung, I would have never taken this leap. And by this point, I've had the S10 Plus for almost 2 weeks, and there's plenty of things that I love about it that made me happy that I switched, and there's also things that I miss about my iPhone. So if you're interested in seeing what those reasons are, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you can be notified when I release those videos. And last but not least, comment your honest opinion on this video. Did I have a valid reason to give the dark side a try, or did I make a huge mistake? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time.
Did you do it?
Yes.
What did it cost?
Everything.